Hey everyone, welcome back to Bots and Bevs, the new web series where we talk everything automation and share some of our favorite beverages. This week I sit down with Chris Young and we're going to cover the hot topic of citizen development. I think you're going to enjoy this one. I hope to see you in the fall, and thanks for watching. Hello everybody, and welcome back to Bots and Bevs, our ongoing video series about everything RPA leading up to our event this fall. I'm Mike Grace, CTO of VerticalApps, and today we're going to be discussing citizen development, and I brought with me Chris Young, our Director of Automation here at VerticalApps. I've known Chris for a long time. He is actually one of the smartest people that I do know.
Oh, you're going to make me blush, Mike.
I know, that's what I'm supposed to do. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been in managing and building technology for about 20 years. It takes me back to being a kid, being on a little Apple IIe, building a Lego logo, and I really thought I was changing the world. But in the reality, technology at its heart is really automating work. So I've been in the technical space for a long time, and I've been in the intelligent automation space for about 6 years now.
6 years. It's a long time. I don't know this stuff's been around that long. Well, let's have a cheers. We'll talk about these a little later.
So good.
It is really good, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
All right, so for the purposes of this episode, we're here to discuss citizen development. I'm going to ask you to pretend like I'm one of our government customers, a federal PM.
Okay.
All right, and I'm going to ask some questions. Sound good?
Perfect.
Are you ready?
Always.
All right. What the is citizen development?
Great question. So there's a lot of different definitions out there, but I'll try to boil it down to something that's fairly common. Essentially, it's when non-technical people in an organization are going to build software, right? Sounds a little bit terrifying, right?
It does.
But think about it like the Excel world, In the Excel world, people can build macros to do things. It's very common in the finance space. And with these low-code, no-code platforms that have really gotten big, there's a lot of hype around this right now.
Sure. It's funny, you bring up Excel and the macros, and you scare me even a little bit more because, I've had experience in those scenarios where that stuff kind of runs wild. Tell me about citizen development and kind of what that means in this world of technology and these low-code, no-code platforms.
Oh, let's think about that Excel example again, right? So what do most organizations do when they're faced with this macro question?
I've come across two different scenarios, right? One being it's crazy as hell, wild, wild west, just people putting shit out all over the place, nothing works. Or everything is so locked down that literally no one can really do anything.
Okay, and which do you think is better?
I always lean a little more towards the secure side because maybe it slows things down a little bit, but I'm kind of the guy that's like, hey, business has a requirement, go to IT, have them solve your requirement.
And IT always solves everybody's requirements, right?
Every time.
Really?
No, not really.
Exactly. So IT organizations are strapped, and the reality is that some of these requests from the business just aren't big enough to really make the cut. So what typically happens in those situations?
Well, the business that I've come across, when you're working with the folks in the mission, they're pretty creative and they really want to get their job done. So they always find a way to get done what they need to get done. But what I still don't understand is, how do we have them do that safely?
Exactly. So I think the idea around citizen development is really trying to bridge that world, both empower the business to solve some of their own problems for those things that are just not big enough for IT to do it themselves, while still providing some level of control, right? We want to make sure that security and privacy are top of mind, especially for our federal customers. And so we don't want to just make it the wild, wild west. Yeehaw! Because then these folks are going to go out and build stuff, and then when things go, they're going to come to IT and beg for help. So we're really trying to find that balance between those two worlds.
Give me an idea. How do we implement that balance?
So the first thing you really want to do is, as you sort of expand outside of a traditional technical organization, you want to make sure that you have agreement from these other organizations at the executive level that they're going to share in this risk. If you're going to do some of this work and you're going to solve some of your own problems, if things go wrong, you're on the hook too along with me, right? I think you also want to have a realistic skills assessment, right? Not everybody can be a citizen developer on day one. And so you really want to make sure that you are setting up people for success. You know, you don't want your newest citizen developer tackling your most complicated, most business sensitive problem. You then want to take a look at your control sets, and you probably want to have a tiered set of controls. And because this is automation we're talking about, you want to have monitoring and enforcement of controls using automation, right? You've got all of these new people building stuff. You can't sit around and babysit them and continually monitor what they're doing because IT is already stretched thin. So you want to have a mechanism that makes it easy for them to get involved, but can kind of be watched, you know, a little big brothery.
What is it when you said something about a tiered sort of control system? What does that mean?
So not every problem or every solution has the same set of risks. So a good example is if I'm building an automation for myself, and all it does is it goes out, downloads a couple reports, puts that information together for me to consume. The risk level there in terms of if something goes wrong, if it's designed poorly, if it breaks, is totally different than something where an automation that's going to be processing thousands of transactions a day is mission critical, et cetera. So there are ways to think about how you're limiting activities and functions, how you're limiting data sets, how you're limiting connections to other systems, testing rigor, design rigor. It's not a one size fits all. And I think this is where people really get tripped up, is because IT says, hey, here's the control set. No matter what you're doing, jump through all the hoops. And that's really a limiting factor because not everybody needs to jump through all the hoops all the time.
Yeah, it sounds like common sense to me. Well, I think we have a lot to dive into in the fall at our meetup because I would love to get into the technology underneath that stuff. But we only have a short time today, unfortunately. I want to get to my favorite part of these videos, though. Mm-hmm. What the is this?
So this is a cherry Amaro coffee tonic. I chose this because, you know, citizen development is all about experimenting and keeping things fresh. Also, as a practitioner, when I'm working, I gotta have coffee.
I mean, it's really good. It is fresh. And I can tell you I've never had one of these before, so that's pretty awesome.
Glad you enjoy it.
Hey man, thanks for spending time with me today. This was a good conversation.
Anytime.
Hopefully, folks out there learned a little something. I don't know.